In part two of a special edition of Power Play, we'll dissect Florida's cabinet races for 2010 and talk about the influence of dirty, sexy money on politics with the chairs, Karen Thurman of the Democratic Party and Jim Greer of the Republican Party. All right, let's go right to dirty, sexy money. Recent scandals involving fundraisers Mendelson and Rothstein have kind of tainted and put a cloud over both parties. Huge amounts of money flowing, if not to the candidates, to the parties and committees and 527s. Is it too much? Are voters fed up with the influence of money?
Well, let me make this clear, Ron. On the Rothstein money, we send it back. And we said we don't want this money, and we sent it back to Kendall Coffey, who is the representative of the law firm, to make sure that people were made whole, or try to make sure they were made whole. As far as the money has always been out there. The 527s, I think there should be more accountability around 527s to know who these folks are. But you know what? At the end of the day, our candidates do need the money to be able to go on to TV to get their message out. They have to be able to, have their messaging done so that voters have a choice. But I do think that when there is tainted money, we should be the people that are sending it back and making sure that.
Okay, but you're not really answering about the calls for reform. Do we need reform statutorily in Florida about fundraising? Because frankly, under your chairmanship, the Democratic Party has been much more competitive in fundraising, and that's one measure of success for a chair.
And now you want to change it.
Well, I'm asking you, should it be changed? Because
well, I think there has been some call for 527s. I believe that Dan Gelber and both Dave Ehrenberg have talked about changes in the 527s and bringing accountability to that. So I would, yes, I would think that they should be looking at those reforms.
Chairman Greer, let's talk about the trial lawyers and the money they put into the John Thrasher Senate race. Blew up in their face. The trial lawyers' agenda at the Capitol is probably dead for like 6 years. And now Thrasher will head up a committee that looks into reforms. Should we reform the influence of money in these committees and even giving to the parties?
Well, I think when you look at 527s, things of that nature, there should be more transparency. I do agree with the fact that we ought to have a better idea where the money's coming from and where it's going. But as it relates to candidates, I mean, Florida is one of the states that has a limit of $500 per candidate, where other states is much higher.
But that's kind of a joke when you can chunk $1 million into the party under other channels, can't you?
But there's transparency there, which every contribution and every expenditure of her party and my party is online and listed. So there's very clear transparency there. At the end of the day, when you have people like Mr. Rothstein and others that have given to Republicans and Democrats, at the end of the day, you refund the money, you give it back, you do the right thing, because you can't do background checks on major donors.
Only when there's a scandal should we respond? I'm asking you both.
Sure, no.
Should there be overall limits in total giving at any level, not just to the candidates, but to the parties and special committees? Overall limits.
Well, I think with candidates it already exists as $500. Right. But with 527s, I think both the chairman and I said more transparency is good. We ought to know where it's coming from and where it's going.
So you guys are going to lead the testimony in front of the legislature for some sort of reform then?
Well, we're going to see what the reform entails, I'm sure, at least from my standpoint.
We have to see what happens.
Okay, I think you guys danced pretty well on that. I'm dizzy from the dancing. Let's go to those exciting cabinet races. Let's start with Attorney General, where Bill McCollum's stepping out to run for governor. And we've got really spirited contests on both the R and the D side of that race. How do you see it shaping up?
I see a Republican winning the Republican primary, and then I see a Republican winning the general election. We've got great Republicans that are going to be out there talking to the voters of the state, and at the end of the day, the Attorney General's office is going to remain Republican.
Is it an embarrassment that the sitting Lieutenant Governor draws an opponent from Holly Benson, the agency head of a pretty remote agency, low-profile, former state lawmaker?
I don't think it's an embarrassment. Lieutenant Governor Kottkamp has been a great partner in the Crist administration and worked very hard for the citizens of Florida. But at the end of the day, there's a Republican primary. It is what it is, and Republicans are going to get to choose their nominee.
And you've got two prominent Democrat lawmakers vying for the nomination on the D side. Is that a good thing?
I think the one thing about it is they have their backgrounds are very similar. They're both prosecutors. The Attorney General's job is required to be the chief police officer for the state of Florida, which what they bring to the table then with their backgrounds is good. So either one of them will make a great, and they've both been great leaders.
Would either of you commit to Gelber Ehrenberg or Kottkamp Benson?
No, but I will say this: we will own the Attorney General's race after this is
you'll-
over.
you'll
Well, we're
borrow
not
it,
going to.
right?
Well, I was going to say we're not going to own it, but we're going to be elected to it.
No, we're going to be elected
Okay,
to it.
well, let's go to that chief financial officer race. Alex Zink, the Democrat's in it, but she's stepping up, trying to become the next governor. And so we have one prominent candidate, the Republican Senate President Jeff Atwater, and no Democrat at all. How is that a good thing, no Democrat in the race?
Ron, we are going to have a strong Democrat.
Why isn't there one yet, though? This is
Well, because we're not
unbelievable.
coming out of the legislature, because I think that it's, again, the mood of the people. The people don't want to just see career politicians running for these offices, and that's what Jeff Atwater is. They want to see somebody that fits the mold of what a chief financial officer should be doing and is responsible for. So we will have a strong Democrat, and we will be able to show the differences between the
All
career
right, I'm going to
and
get you to commit. Is there a date certain by which there'll be a
No.
prominent Democrat in that race?
No.
All right, so how does this help Jeff Atwater, who's kind of running unopposed from either side right now?
Well, he does have another Republican in the race, but he is the front runner. And at the end of the day, I think Senate President Atwater has served Florida well. He has a business background. He understands the duties and responsibilities of being the chief financial officer of the state.
Okay.
And voters are embracing his candidacy, and he's going to be elected the chief financial officer of Florida, most likely.
All right, let's go to the blue jeans and plaid short sleeve shirts and overalls, the down ballot, very low profile ag commissioner race, but one of the traditional three main industries in Florida. Spirited races on both sides. The Republicans, how's it shaping up?
Well, we've got two great candidates. We've got Senator Baker and we've got Congressman Putnam. Two Republicans that understand the duties of that office, that understand the importance of that office. Although it is a cabinet seat that a lot of people don't know what it does, its responsibility with consumer protection, consumer affairs, the agriculture side is very important. And we've got two great Republicans running that understand the job and will hit the ground running when they're elected to that
And
office.
you have at least two Democrats running. Talk about them.
Great.
And can this race emerge and get noticed on a crowded and very excited political ballot next
We
year?
have three that are actually running, which all of them have, or at least some of them have come directly out of the agriculture community.
Let's name them quickly.
Rick Minton, Randy Hatch, and Scott Maddox. So we have three very strong candidates. Again, they will have a very strong debate between and the voters will choose. And I think the voters are going to choose along the lines of what they want to see in the agricultural, actually in the commission's office. What direction do they want to see this go? Because I agree with the chair that agriculture is one of our largest industries, and it should not be a second to anything else because it is an important cabinet post.
Quick question before you go to your power plays. Is it going to be a problem to get our electorate excited enough to get out and vote?
Well, I think that's our job. I mean, is to make sure that our electorate gets out. That's what the chairs do. We find the ways to best present our issues and our ideas to the people and to continue to ask them in whatever way we ask to come out and vote. It is their responsibility to make these choices.
You have a fired up Republican base?
We have a fired up Republican base that's going to be unified, and more importantly, independents and even Democrats are rejecting what's going on in Washington, President Obama's initiatives and agenda, and that's going to energize all Floridians to go to the polls and vote Republican.
Although, please remember, Florida went Obama
I understand that.
in this last election. Let's go to your respective political power plays of the week. Mr. Greer.
I think the power play of the week is the new St. Petersburg, Florida mayor down there, Mayor Foster. Is a Republican, well known to be a Republican. The Democratic Party played very heavily in that, sent out mailers and did everything they could to ensure his defeat, and he won, and that demonstrates that independents and Floridians, particularly in that city, but statewide, are going Republican.
Okay. Chairwoman Thurman.
So let's talk about jobs, which I think is on everybody's mind across this country and in Florida. Let's talk about Mayport, where we are now seeing a new carrier go in there. Let's talk about President Obama coming down here to Arcadia, working with private business to expand our solar energy base and bring in our green energies.
All right, Chairwoman Thurman, Chairman Greer, thank you both very much. I'd like to have you come back after the first of the year when we're really in the 2010 election year. Go to the Safety Review for the latest political news, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.